What's up, beautiful people? This is Christian from the Successful Spiritualpreneur podcast, and today I'm super excited because I have a very special guest for you guys. Her name is Fabi Paolini, and she's a brand strategist who helps coaches, consultants, and experts position themselves as premium brands that attract high-end clients by upgrading their marketing with magnetic messaging. Fabi has generated over 1.5 million in the last 2 years working with transformational coaches and consultants from all over the world. As an immigrant from Venezuela, wife and mom of three girls, Fabi values freedom, spirituality, and flow as a way to build a sustainable, aligned business that generates a ripple effect on other people's lives and success. Welcome to the show, Fabi.
Hey there, I'm super excited to be here, Christian, and great to talk to your audience and get into a few interesting things today.
Yeah, I love that. So, as a first question, I always like to ask people, tell us a little bit about your background, like where you come from, how long you here in the States, and you're an immigrant, and how did you make your journey here?
Yeah, well, I had a pretty unique childhood very quickly. I won't get into like all of it, but my dad worked in a company that moved us every 2 years. So I grew up all over the world. I was born in Brazil. I've lived in India, in Spain, in the US, in Venezuela. Venezuela is where I'm actually from. And in 2015, we left Venezuela to the US. I was pregnant with my first child at the time, and we wanted our child to be American, and we had zero intention of staying in the US. However, the political situation in Venezuela just got worse and worse. It's kind of crazy right now, but that's another story. And so we decided to stay. And, at the time, I had already done an MBA. I had been working mostly doing design work and branding. And I had quite a bit of an experience in that area in design, marketing, but I hadn't really ever built my own business online. So I started taking a lot of coaching programs and hiring people to learn a little bit more about marketing. In the very beginning, I was doing a lot of branding work, like literally designing websites and not necessarily going as much into messaging. And I mean, a little bit of it, but not like the main thing. And as time went on, what I realized is that if you have a beautiful website, a beautiful brand, it's not going to do anything if you don't have a very clear message. So little by little, that started to be more and more the driving force behind my brand, and my business really focused on messaging, on attracting premium clients, how to speak to people, how to really activate buyers, how to show people something that I like to call your angle of mastery, which is like what makes you unique, what makes you different, what is the big idea that you're selling people into. And that is really what I focus on today. So very short, that's kind of what that journey has been like.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I bet living in so many different countries, you just like get to automatically be you have to adapt at all
Yeah.
these different situations and different environments that you are being placed into. So from that standpoint of view, like how were you able to like kind of keep your balance in your life? Because obviously, yeah, like how and
Well,
that ties into the question, how what's your
Mhm.
definition of a successful spiritualpreneur?
Yeah.
Because those are entrepreneurs that kind of like balance or kind of have one foot in one world and the other one in the other, so
hmm Yeah. So I think that for me as a child, it had to do a lot with my values and staying grounded in my identity. And how funny, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what has happened over the years as I've built my own success and I've built my own business, right? For me, what ultimately is success for me personally, it's about being able to create freely. And so what I mean with that, it's about not feeling like I have to create something for it to sell, but I have to create something because I have to create it, right? Because it's coming from my heart. I'm getting a download, I'm getting an idea. I can't stop my heart from speaking. And for me, ultimate success is about being in that place. And so for me, part of how I achieve that balance is really staying grounded, again, kind of like when I was a kid, in my identity, in who I am, in what is real truth and not the stories that our brains want to tell us sometimes that are not really true. And a lot of the work that I consistently do and I value so much has to do with the inner work, the practices that keep me grounded, that keep me connected to truth, that keep me here and not in the future or in the past. So does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And so for people who, who are interested in learning more about how they can position themselves, like,
Mhm.
because we have a lot of listeners that, are kind of at the beginning of their journey and are, looking into how can I be a coach? How can I be an authority in my space? How would you tell them to go about?
So there's a few different key factors that I feel are very, very important in terms of positioning. The first one is really understanding who your buyer is. I think that people tend to focus a lot on the problem, and you need to focus. That it is still one of the keys, but they tend to focus more on this is the problem that I solve, and not really have a very clear picture around who is the person that has that problem that is ready to invest in solving that problem, right? Because sometimes people might be, I have this problem. It's a horrible problem. I really want to fix it, but they're not really going to, it's not their priority to fix it, or they financially can't afford it, or they don't want to change their identity or who they are in order to be able to fix that problem. And so most of the times people are focused on this is the problem that I solve and this is my audience, but not really understanding, well, who is the buyer within that audience? So that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is what I call that angle of mastery. And it's really figuring out, well, what is it that you're truly selling? I'm not talking about the problem, or not the problem, the program, the offer, or how many modules you have. I'm saying, what is it that you're selling people into? What is the big idea? What is the true concept, the true thing that you want your audience to buy into? And that has to be the core of everything. For me, that is what effective positioning is about. It's truly understanding what am I really selling here? What is it that I want to be known for? What do I stand for? What is it that really matters to me so that I can get people behind it and say, okay, that's what I want, right? One of the things that I often talk about is the importance of turning what you do from a nice to have to a need to have. In the sense of, most of the time I see people talking about what they do and it's like, sure, it would be nice for me to work on spiritually growing. It would be nice for me to lose weight. It would be nice for me to, grow this thing or that. But is it something that I need to spend thousands of dollars on? No, I'm not sure. So it's, how do I communicate what I do so that it feels like to your audience, like I really need that. This is exactly what I'm looking for, building desire for it. So for me, when we talk about positioning, it's understanding your audience, and within the audience, who the buyer is, what the problem that that person has looks like, and how you're coming in and turning what you do into that angle of mastery and like that antidote to that problem, so that it feels like something that they need to have right now.
Hmm. And so, how would you guide someone to finding out what's really, I guess, because it connects back to their why, like ultimately, like that is, not just the offer but also the why you're doing it, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
How do you connect somebody to their angle of mastery? How do they find more of their angle?
Mm-hmm. Good question. So really, I have a very specific process around it, and for me, it's kind of interesting how I lead my clients into it. The first part of that is actually tied into what the root cause of your audience's problem is. And so what I like to do is first of all, have a really clear picture, actually before the root cause, of what are the different things that you do. Oftentimes what tends to happen, especially like with the clients that I talk to, is that I talk to people who tend to be experts and they have experience in lots of different areas. Like if you're a spiritual coach, maybe you're doing EFT, and then you're also bringing in shadow work, or there's all of these like different modalities that you're bringing in. And oftentimes what happens when you're an expert in what you do is that either you're overcomplicating it when you explain it so that your audience feels like, I don't know, I have no understanding. It feels too out there, you're overwhelming me, or the opposite happens where you're simplifying it so much that you're saying like, live your best life, and that doesn't really mean anything, right? And so the first thing is understanding, okay, what are the different pieces that I bring to the table? And then from that, it's, what is the problem that I'm solving? And more than the problem, what is the root cause of that problem? So really going deep to understanding, well, what is it that I'm really, really solving here, right? At the core. And so when you understand what you're solving at the core, that's when you can come up from my perspective, like on the angle of mastery, because the angle of mastery tends to be the antidote to that root cause of the problem. Hopefully that makes sense. But it's a process of like, these are the things that I can do. This is the problem that I can solve. And this is how the things that I can do specifically can solve that problem. So yes, we connected back to your why, but for me, it's, you know, it's really taking a stand for the things that you believe in. What do you stand for? What do you stand against? What do you want to be known for? So it's a very deep and intricate process that allows you to get clarity on these things and really kind of like put a stake in the ground and say, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, beautiful. So let's say I am that person who really knows what I'm standing for and what my why is. How would I then magnetize that audience? Like, and you can be as practical or as
Mm-hmm.
strategical as you'd like to be with that question.
Yeah, so I like to kind of tying it back to what I was saying earlier, really get clear around who your buyer is, right? Because as I was saying before, I usually give an example of like, you can have, for me, I tend to use a lot of weight loss examples. I think that they're very easy for people to grasp, right? So you can have two women that have the exact same weight that they want to lose. They might have the exact same height, the exact same weight, and they're both overweight. And yet one of them is going to ever want to spend maybe $50 or $100 on some sort of workout program. Whereas the other one's like, where is the 5K coach so that I can, do a whole program to be able to lose weight, right? Problem is the same. The motivations, the drivers are different. So for you to be able to speak to those people and magnetize them, you have to understand, how does the problem live and exist in the life of somebody who is the ready to buy person. And for that, you have to get very practical. So instead of using a message that is like, oh, you've gained weight and you're doing a bunch of diets and nothing is working and you want to lose weight, which is like the typical thing that people would do, you would get more into how that problem lives for that person. So instead of that, you would say things like, you're spending more time thinking about what to wear than what to say in your boardroom meeting. And you really, you have a big meeting, you're going to be on stage and you're really uncomfortable and feel like people are talking or thinking about your weight gain instead of what you're saying. So it's like, again, how does that problem show up for that higher level person? And so the more specific that you are within that message, and the more that you're speaking to how that problem shows up for them in a very 3D way, the more that they're going to say, oh, this is exactly what I'm experiencing. Because at the end of the day, one of the things I often tell my clients, it's like, your audience is getting so bombarded right now with information between social media and like the Blake Lively in Ends With Us movie drama and Trump and politics and what cat memes. Like, it's so much information. For you to get people's attention, you have to let them know, I am here to speak to you. It's like you want to become as effective as the TikTok algorithm, where people are like, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for, right? And that's what you're looking for within your message. For you to be able to magnetize people, people think, oh, like millionaires are or higher ticket clients are hiding in some secret Facebook group or Instagram or whatever. And that's not it. It's that you have to make sure that the message is really speaking to them so that they feel like, oh, this is me. This is exactly for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And where do you think, um, where would they then hear that message?
Everywhere. They're everywhere. I literally last week signed a 20K paid in full client. I'm not promoting my stuff in a different place. It's just that my message is very specific. And because I talk very specifically to how my audience lives the problem without agitating, I'll explain that in a second. What happens is that they recognize that it's for them. So what typically happens and what most people are being taught, and this is what I was doing too, is really focus on pain agitation, right? And I call this being the Ursula, where you're speaking to the poor unfortunate soul. Little Mermaid reference there. And so what happens is that you're using your whole message about, you feel hopeless. you're full of anxiety, you can't sleep at night, nothing is working, you feel like frustrated and lost, right? And that's what everybody's teaching you to do in terms of messaging. But what I've discovered is that that type of message attracts people that are broke, because you're literally going to get on the phone people that are full of anxiety, hopeless, can't sleep at night, all the things that you literally said, which in theory you're like, yes, that's who I want. That's not who you want. If they're completely full of anxiety and completely hopeless, they will not, like, their internal objection to invest is way too big. Can you sell to those people? Sure. If you're like a cutthroat salesperson, you can. But is that who you want in your programs? Probably for the most part, not the case, right? So what I've discovered is that what you want to do is really think about, again, how that problem lives in the minds of the buyer. The buyer, yes, they might have, let's use that example, they might have some anxiety, but they have to have some sort of success. They have to be doing well in their lives. There has to be a lot of things in their life that are going well. And so that's who you speak to, not the person that is bedridden. And again, nothing wrong around that. You can sell to that, but it's very hard for you to sell a higher ticket offer to somebody that is like, has so much anxiety that they can't leave their room, right? Very difficult for them to financially be able to afford it. And also, maybe even if they are financially able, let's say that they are, even if they're bedridden or full of anxiety at that high level, the mindset part of you saying, I'm going to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a coach to help me overcome this is too big. So it's really difficult for you to sell to them. And when you do sell to them, it's very difficult for them to get results. So when you're very specific in that message and you're creating content that is geared towards the buyer and how they think and how they view themselves and how they view the problem, that's where they raise their hand and they're like, this is speaking to me. Most people are very condescending in their message and they think like, oh, I'm above you. Poor you. No. Your buyer is not poor me. They're not some little victims. Even if they are victims in a way, they don't have victim mentality. They're like, let's go. I want to solve the problem. Who do I need to hire? What do I need to do? And they just do it. So that's who you need to speak to.
Yeah. And if people sometimes, as a spiritual person, you kind of are afraid a little bit of selling people on something. Like, how can you like reframe that perception within yourself?
Well, I think that the reason why that happens is that you don't really understand what you're selling. I think that when people are afraid of selling their product, oftentimes, very often, it tends to be a messaging issue too. And more than a messaging issue, an audience issue. Because if you're selling, like, let's say spiritual, something intangible, right? To somebody that is not really ready for it and they don't get results. Results is very vague when we talk about spiritual coaching, right? What happens is that you as a coach feel like you feel bad, your confidence is shot, you feel like you did something wrong. And it's not that you did something wrong, is that you were selling it to the wrong person. So I think that when you really understand the buyer, it makes a big difference. To give you an example, I pay $2,500 a month to my mindset, spiritual energy coach, right? I don't get a tangible result from that in the sense of like, I can't say, it's not something that I'm pinpointing, yet it is extremely valuable for me because I understand that for me, when I am feeling centered and balanced, kind of back to what you were saying, and connected, I am at my highest level. I'm more creative. I can create more, coming back to what I was talking about, what success means to me. I'm a better mom to my kids. I'm a better wife to my husband. I'm more present. And so that to me is invaluable, right? So if you're somebody that's selling coaching, you have to understand, well, who is this a need to have for, right? Like, again, coming back to what I was saying before, nice to have versus need to have. For what type of person will value the work that I do as a need to have? And when you understand that audience and when you sell to them, you're not afraid of selling, or you don't feel like I feel bad, because for me, that work is something that I need to have. I need to have my energy mindset coach next to me, like literally sending her WhatsApp messages when something comes up, when I'm triggered by something, a challenge, and some moment of uncertainty. I can come to her and say, okay, this just happened. What do you think? How do I manage it? What do I do? And having that person by my, that is a need to have for me, right? And so for you as a coach, you need to understand why what you do is a need to have for the right person. That's when selling feels like, well, of course I need to sell it. Like this is fundamental for somebody. So they need it. I have to give it to them.
Yeah, beautiful. And how often when you work with clients um, that come to you, like how often do you help them with like shifting their identity within those sets of what they want to grow into?
That's a good question. I think that the real work that I do tends to be identity work. And so everything that I focus on tends to be tied to identity because I think that we've been taught so many things around marketing, even what I was saying before, like becoming that Ursula, speaking to the poor and fortunate. So let me agitate pain. This is what works. This is what has worked for years. Um, it it turns us into somebody that we're not really, right? And I get this all the time. I talk to clients all the time that are like, I did this. I trusted the coach. They told me that's what I need to do. I thought that that was true. I took action on it. And I feel like it's not really me. So it's like coming back to, well, what do you want to say? How do you want to market? And obviously there's strategies around that. But I think that the biggest thing that I see as being an issue is people not trusting that they know what's best for them in their businesses. And so it's like they're trusting the coach. I literally just hopped off a conversation with a client right now, and I
Mhm.
told him, you know better than I do. This is your business, not my business. I can come in and I can give you all of the messaging pieces. But if your gut tells you that's not it, that's not it. I don't know more than you do. And so that having somebody pay me to have me tell them that is sometimes something that people need. They need to understand like, well, the true identity that you need to build the success that you want is the one that trusts your gut and really trust it and trust your gut more than your head. Trust your heart more than your head in a way, right? Because your head will tell you, um, no, you have to sell, you have to show up more, you have to do more launches, you have to do this, you're being lazy, blah, blah. And that's not true. Sometimes you do need a break, or sometimes you do need different things. So for me, the identity work is consistent because once you understand your audience, you feel more confidence in what you're selling, who you're selling to, what you're selling, that message. But then also, well, who do you need to be a match for that person, and who do you need to be to really be a match for the business that you desire? And so that is very deep identity work that we're constantly working through, a lot of embodiment too, right? Again, it's like another example of things that I see often when we're talking about like spiritual coaches or life coaches is like they think that what sells is like a clear ROI, right? So it's like you're a spiritual coach, you've done every spiritual thing possible, and then your messaging is, I'm going to help you reach 10K months. And I'm like, what are you doing? Is this really who you are? No, but the other thing doesn't sell. It does sell when you know how to sell it and how to create the message. Why are you selling something that's like money related when you sound like every coach out there? You think it's easier to sell, and yet there's a gazillion versions of you selling, I'm going to help you get 10K per month, right? That's not who you are. So it's really coming back to what matters to you, and let's build a message around that, and let's find the people who will value that and will pay really good money to have somebody come in and help them with that. Don't think that you just have to go in a different direction because it's what sells, because that's not true. So that was a long
It's
answer, but
Yeah, no, but that's so true, and I think it's something that people really need to hear,
yeah.
because it's so frustrating for somebody going out there, even if they know they're wine, they share the message, they see just like it doesn't work, like to just hear that it's not a reason to just completely ditch your message. I
Mhm.
think ultimately the world needs you, right? And there's
Yeah.
only you and your message, and if you can't monetize it from month one or two, then I don't like that shouldn't be a reason to give up. Like if you
Oh
can't
yeah.
pursue a message for a longer time than that, then it's maybe not your message.
Yeah. One of the things that I often tell my clients, is that you have to be able to create no matter what. So what I mean is like it's finding your vehicle. If you're great at doing video, for example, that's what you need to do. And like what is the thing that even if it takes you a year to get a client, you would still do because you are so passionate about it, right? Oftentimes what happens is that people are like, no, what works is TikTok. And you're like, I hate TikTok. I don't like short form video. I don't consume, or LinkedIn is a good example of that. That's when I hear often like, oh no, I think that my clients are in LinkedIn. I hate the platform. I post and I run, but I'm using that. So it's going to be very difficult for you to stay consistent if your heart's not in it. And what I think that happens so often is that we've been sold, I was sold into this idea of like this like laptop lifestyle. It's so easy building a business online. You just show up and you're going to sign a 10K client by Monday and you're going to become a millionaire by Tuesday. That's not how it works. This takes time. It takes you consistently showing up. And you're going to get zero engagement, zero comments, zero views, zero anything. Maybe not. There's people that are like, they run, they jump, and immediately they get lucky or it just works. But for the majority of people, it takes you consistently showing up and you have to be willing to stick to it and keep on improving, evolving, optimizing, tweaking, changing. That's the only reason why I'm here all of these years later and have built a really successful business where we generate anywhere between 50, 100K per month is because I've stayed at it. 100%. There's weeks when I get zero engagement. I get like everything is slow and I'm still here and I'm still showing up again and again and again and again and again. And I had webinars in the beginning that had 3 people in it. And I still did another one and I did another one and I did another. And it's you keep on showing up again and again and again. That's it. That's the true formula for success. Like anything else is not true. The truth is that it takes work, it takes dedication, and it takes your commitment to what is my message and how do I speak to my people. Period. I
Love it.
know
Yeah.
people don't want to hear that though.
No, it's true. And, there's this saying in the startup world, it says every overnight success took at least 10 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think people, yeah, it's easy. It's easy to get distracted. I don't blame them,
Well, I
So
mean, yeah, and I think that it's like obviously we all want fast results. Who doesn't want fast results? But yes, it can work, but oftentimes fast results come with fast downfalls afterwards, right? Like it's like it worked fast and then it stopped working just as fast, right? So you have like a month, yes, and then everything failed. So it takes deep work and it takes consistent work for it to be a long-term success. That's what I think, at least, or what I've experienced.
beautiful. Yeah, so we're coming towards the end of the episode. We have about 5 minutes left, so I would love to ask you a couple more personal questions, if
Mhm.
that's all right.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I'd just love to know, who or what inspires you, like spiritually, and also entrepreneurially. Is there any people that you really look up to, or just like, yes, look at this person, look at that person, they're amazing.
Well, there's lots of people that I look up to. I have such a big kind of weird combination. I'm very much into lots of different, lots of different things. I think that part of my introduction to like spiritual law of attraction type of work was Gabby Bernstein. I love her The Universe Has Your Back books. I also am right now very into Richard Dotz and everything he teaches. I think it's probably my favorite. And I've also been, and this is like very random actually for me, but I've actually been reading the Bible quite a bit too, because I feel like there's so many interesting passages and things that you can interpret in so many different ways. For me, it's like I grew up Catholic, didn't really, I went to church sometimes, and that was about it. Um, but I went very deeply into the like entire law of attraction, spirituality, all of that. And right now I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, how do I bridge these two things? Like, how do I bring them together? What is one group saying? What is the other group saying? how is that the same? How do I bring these two pieces to, like, what is common? So that's kind of what I'm into right now. And it's been really interesting and really revealing how everybody's saying the same thing. It's just in a different way. So that's kind of what I've been into a lot. It's like a mix of all of that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So, um, with that being said, what do you think is your vision of the new earth, and also maybe with a focus on like marketing? Like, how does marketing, how does brand, like, how does that
Mm-hmm.
whole area look like in the new earth? Where you?
Yeah, yeah. I think that it ties very much into what I was saying earlier. I don't think that bro marketing, let's call it, right? Like the, I don't know, very claimy, I'm going to help you become a millionaire by Monday. Let me push you in. Let's hustle through and that sort of thing. I don't think that that is working anymore. I think it used to work really well. And I think that people are getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And so, especially with AI and so much automation, right? People are really looking for authenticity and for you being genuine and honest with your work. So I feel like there's a big tie, like that brings those two things together, right? It's like you not pushing people into selling and you trusting your audience, and at the same time you showing up authentically and connected and really like with the high vibration and energy. That is what I feel is selling more and what works more, not only for because I'm using it as a marketing strategy, but because I feel like the world is changing and people are not into anything that isn't truth, right? I think that if we are using pressure or just tactics that are out of alignment in a way to get people to buy it, there's not there isn't truth to it. And I think that people are recognizing that more and more. If you're trying to sell me into something so hard, why? Like, shouldn't this be easier, right? And people are recognizing it more. And so the more honest that you are about everything, again, coming back to what I was saying before, it's like you're selling spiritual coaching and you're like, I'm going to help you make 10K a month. That's not honest. It's not that you can't help people do that, but that's not what you're really here to do. And so that's why you have a hard time making sales. And the more honest that you are with your true message, the more that you're going to be able to attract your people. The more honest that you are with your audience, the more that they're going to connect with you too. So I feel like that's, does that make sense how that ties in together?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a macroeconomic term. It's called market sophistication.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, the market, people just get smarter, which thank God they're getting smarter. You know,
Yeah, great.
nobody wants to be sold into you're just one funnel away
Oh
thing.
Lord.
You
Yeah,
know, and
exactly.
then yeah, people just are evolving, and it's beautiful to see
Mm-hmm.
also the marketing that goes with that evolve, right? And everything, like
Mm-hmm.
word that I extracted from what you've said with authenticity, trust, and connecting, like really just being with yourself and who you show up to be.
Exactly. I think that that's what works in today's world. And the more that you can get behind your message and the truth of what you're here to say, the more successful you're going to be in every way. Because externally, your business is going to experience success, but internally, you're going to feel just more at peace and more confident and more certainty in yourself and what you're doing and more unwavering in your decisions in a way because you're coming from truth. And that's ultimately what we're here for.
I love that. Those are wonderful, wonderful teachings and sharing your wisdom. So thank you so much for being on with us today. Are there any last words you would like to share with your audience? And then, of course, where people can find you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's never stop looking for that message, what you're here to say. And you can go to readytoinvestclients.com. I have a 20-minute training that really walks you through kind of some of the things we talked about today: how to speak to buyers, how to uncover your angle of mastery, how to not be the Ursula, all of those things. That's where you can find that training. And you can find me everywhere else at Fabi Paolini, fabipaolini.com, Fabi Paolini on YouTube, on app, on all the things. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere.
Great. Awesome. And that's Paolini, that's Fabi, Fabi, and then Paolini is Paolini. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. Or readytoinvestclients.com
There you go.
is an easy one to remember.
Sweet. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much,
Really
Christian.
pleasure. And yeah, wishing you so much fun for your future journeys. And may you help so many with your marketing and brand messaging tips.
Thank you so much. It's lovely being here and having a great conversation. Thank you all for listening.
Bye for now.